Welcome to this Q&A session with Johnny Ma, director of To Live to Sing. I'm really pleased to be talking to Johnny. He's in Mexico right now. I last saw him in Macau at the film festival there back at the end of 2019. And in fact, this film was the very first one that I programmed for our festival here in New Zealand. Before I even took over as director, I was already spotting films, and I saw this film, To Live to Sing, in Shanghai with Johnny and his cast and crew, which was an incredible experience. Johnny, welcome.
Hi, how are you, Martin?
Well, I'm really pleased to see you. It's been too long, and we always have such a good time together when we meet. This is like, at least we have a little bit of a connection here. I'm
Yeah.
delighted that we've been able to have To Live to Sing at our festival this year. But just a little bit about you. I mean, you're of Chinese origin, born in Shanghai, grew up somewhat in Canada, studied in the USA. You've made a couple of films back in China. You made Old Stone, which was a very, very different film than this one. Set on the streets and really that film was, discussing a situation where people are trying to eke out an existence, a small existence on the street. And I guess To Live to Sing is also the same kind of thing, but in a different framework. What is it that draws you to these smaller lives, the ones that don't usually have a big spotlight thrown on them?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's I guess number one, there's a practical thing about the life of a Chinese independent filmmaker. The industry has been booming over there, but for independent film, sort of our canvas has been getting smaller and smaller. So just the practicality of shooting in a big city with the government and police watching, and it's becomes a little bit more difficult. So certainly, I mean, I've been very interested in telling stories that's set in the city. It just hasn't materialized in terms of sort of budget levels and things like that. I mean, in terms of Old Stone, my first film, that was more of a moral tale. Me wanting to sort of wanting to tell the message of showing, that in this society, in this world, I mean, not just China, but anywhere, that a good person has a harder time to sort of live and survive, and that was sort of the message I wanted to tell. And the city that I chose, or the town that I chose, was for its kind of you know blandness, the fact that it looked like every town in China. Where this particular film, To Live to Sing, is a very particular, specific, about a community, about a group of people that are performing, a craft that is disappearing. So they happen to, I mean, and they are being pushed from the city to the outskirts and further and further. So, I mean, we shot it in the place that they're from. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like in terms of the people, I mean, like without a budget, I mean, those were, they were the people that were willing to spend as much time with me. I come from sort of with an interest in documentary, so I always would like to spend as much time with, the cast and the actors as much as possible. And in China these days, also working with professional stars, it's very difficult to get time. Sometimes one day they arrived the day before, and the next day they're filming. So
Right.
it just doesn't fit with my process.
You're a grassroots kind of from the ground up kind of approach. Hey, when you made this film on as you just said, a small budget with with real people, no cast to speak of, and then it was a film that was invited to Directors Fortnight in the Cannes Film Festival last year. I guess, how did that feel is a question, but how did that happen? How did the Cannes Festival come to know about this new film?
Yeah. So through the making of the first film and the difficulty of making my first film, I kind of came to understand more the Chinese industry. The kind of films that investors and are into, and also they would tell you that's what the audience want. I never liked them telling me what is working in the industry. But essentially, I knew that a film like To Live, Let Sing, if it was made with a cast of non-professionals, I would never be able to get the kind of investment that I was into, that I needed to make the film. So, but it was crucial for me to
Sure.
use these real people. So I knew that potentially, the money or a lot of it would have to come from international. I would have to get certain festivals sort of support, and in some way, the only way to fight for the survival of this story and this film was to go to sort of the biggest platform that an art house cinema would have, in the world. And after going to Berlin with my first film, I kind of sort of had my target on Cannes for this one. So it was never kind of, it just happened. It was always our target. It was just like, okay, we're making this film with a non-professional cast, so our life, our existence in China is, the chances of reaching the movie theaters is very small. So we have to be able to like start off with the biggest bang, and Cannes is the place where sort of films like ours could potentially still have. I mean, we're just trying to give ourselves a chance, to reach the audience in China, because that's what it was always about, basically.
Well, you certainly got the great chance for that. How did you find these characters? I mean, there was a documentary aspect to it, and then you found the characters in the world that they lived in, and you explored it in this hybrid fictionalized version of their own lives. Tell us a little bit about the birth of the story.
Yeah. After I made my first film, I was approached actually as a job to adapt an existing documentary into a television movie for two very famous actors in China. So, and the documentary was based on the opera troupe that is, was based on their daily life, essentially. And, it was made in a very small, independent way, sort of by a local journalist. So I watched the documentary and I thought, man, these characters are really great. They're amazing. So my job was to dramatize it for a fictional world, a fiction screen. But it wasn't until I went to visit them on a scouting trip that I kind of just fell in love with them. The first night we got there with my producer and my friend, and we just got sort of we ate with them and we got drunk, and they put us all in opera makeup. So it was like a lot of fun, and I just felt that like it would be a very special experience to make a film with them, because they were performers. I mean, they weren't film performers, but they had this craft and this sort of technique, with their art for 10, 15, 20 years, that it would be really hard for a professional actor to to get to that level, of authenticity. So and they were a family too. This was a story about a family. So I just saw this sort of kind of this 10, 12 people of this family already with 10 years of sort of experience together. And I just knew that was sort of the way to make it. And of course, to make it in the hybrid way, because I knew that there was this documentary. So for the first while, in the beginning of the preparation of the film, that was hanging over my head, meaning that there was a documentary. So their story has been already been told. So what can I bring to the table that would take their story and to another place, to tell it in a different way. So that was when, I found this sort of, this sort of surrealism, the visual aspect of it, and in order to sort of tell it like an opera, like kind of like what the opera world, infuse it into the story, and that sort of gave me in some way a permission to make another film about them.
So beyond that intervention of bringing that surreal cinema language to the story, to the rather gritty story that frames it, were there any other fictional elements you brought? Any other, a storyline or a particular conflict or elements like that you added to the narrative that was beyond just the documentary aspect?
Um, yeah, I mean, yes. Well, just little things, to kind of like tweak the drama and hype, because it to me, an opera is like, I guess in modern days, we have melodrama, in that
Right.
way. So the actual documentary, like I would say 20-30% of it is based on what was happening in their life. I mean, but what they were going through in the fictional film is what they were going through in real life too. So when I created the ending of the film, which was the theater is demolished and that they were coming back, when everything has changed, and they sort of had this very lyrical goodbye. In some way, I was giving them, a chance to pre-live the end of their art form, in some way. So, and they wanted to experience that too, and to have that exercise. So, for example, there is one scene in the film where it was the goodbye lunch or dinner. And that was something that they suggested to me, and they were like, hey, in our world, if we were going to stop performing, with a troupe, we would all get together and have a meal together before we all go off in their own way, So I kind of knew that that was something that we needed to do. And, I asked them, because we needed some extras of the audience for that particular scene. So I said to them, instead of just me calling in some extras, why don't you guys call in the people that you are closest with, the audience, people that you have developed, an actual relationship, because in some way this film is going to exist, after they're gone, because a lot of those audience are 80, 70, 80 years old. So, it's a way for all of us to remember this time, and for you to remember your craft, even because we all know that it's going away, So that was something very special. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's fictionalizing and dramatizing sort of what they all know is coming, So it was kind of therapy in some way too, for them and for me.
It's a really beautiful scene, the one you just described, and our audiences that are listening to this will have just seen the characters who you suggested they bring in that populate the just outside the central narrative of the opera company, also very beautiful, and some of them recur when they come to the shows, or they're being encouraged to come to the shows. Being able to do that, being so close to them, the film is really intimate. It feels like, as you described your first meeting with them, that intimacy never went away, that they invited you and they opened the door and said, come be with us. How did you shoot it? Was it a tiny crew? And how long did it take? I mean, it feels like you were part of the company for that time.
Yeah. We had I would say a modest sized crew, of like, always maybe 20, 30 people, 20 people or so. So it wasn't tiny. I mean, it wasn't a tiny little documentary crew, like a 5 people crew. We had people around, and I knew that, like, I knew that I wanted to bring a visual style to the scene. So we needed time to dress the locations. We have art departments. We have, the various sort of departments. But we wanted to keep this sort of lived in feeling with them. So I knew that the only way to get that was to have time, So, and also for the performers, even though they were performers, they never acted on screen. And the honest truth is, like, as a director directing actor, to have 10, 12 people in the scene at once, it's very difficult. It's a challenge. I've never done that before. So I needed them to, not only dramatize the scene, but also to feel alive, so I could choose to shoot it in the documentary way, not to let them know anything, or I can just really get them prepared, so I kind of did, I would say, the latter part of it. We built the entire theater, like it was a location that they had left before. So it was just a junkyard at that point. So we had, our art director dressed the place up to be an actual theater. And then we moved them in, basically 2 months before the filming, so that, for the time of them living there, I mean, there was, we paid their salary, so they were actually lived there. They were performing, they were rehearsing there with us every single day. So we would have an improv coach, working with them every morning, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. So their job and their life became, getting ready for the filming. So that, I think, that helped sort of put down the pressure of, like, because they needed to, they were artisans, they needed to live. So they could just concentrate on sort of relaxing and hanging out with the crew and hanging out with, you know, the camera person, so that we're all felt like a part of the family. And you know, and the art direction, the prop, the sets, you know, they just got better looking as they lived there longer, you know, because the first time we put it there, I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't feel right, you know. But after 2 weeks, not even touching anything, just having the real opera troupe, you know, moving things around because they're living there, it felt much better, you know. And so by the time we were filming, we had already, you know, of like this, the immediate crew of the camera person and the art directors and the casting director, we had all been together for, you know, at least 2 months, you know, all together every single day. So you know, so by the time we're filming, I didn't have to say, oh, I just had to call out the scene number and they knew exactly what we were going to do. And then my thing with this blocking was to change up whatever we did in the rehearsal, so that, you know, so they would have to rediscover, you know, the scene, but they knew what was going to happen. So it just became a lot more natural than, let's say, you know, something that was much more stagey, but also a little bit more prepared than what it would be if, you know, if it was just a documentary.
Sure. You mentioned improv, and being that they're you know, professional performers as opera performers, but also off stage, they're extraordinary personalities and characters, which is, you know, what drew you to them in the first place. That improv process, I guess you that was enrich the film. Obviously, that's a given. Were there specific things that they found and gave to you as a gift from those improvs, or you know, from their own lives that they brought to the table?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the scene, you know, with the you know, with the dinner scene where they mentioned this thing, and you know, we added it into the film. But it was a balance, you know, like, because, you know, as the filmmaker, I was telling a story, you know, so I had to ask certain characters to, let's say, you know, because there were so many characters, I had to sort of characterize certain people to tell them, it's like, hey, you are you, but you are yourself at this one particular time. I want you to more mold yourself more into that way. So for example, the lead character, yeah, she was this spicy, like, you know, temperamental, you know, but she was also very lively and relaxed. But I for the film, I needed her to all play to sort of carry the weight of the film on her shoulders. So she had to be a little bit more, you know, tense, I would say, you know, throughout that action. But you know, in terms of sort of what they gave me, I mean, a lot, right? Because I used everything, you know, what they told me. I mean, everything that happened in the film, sort of at one point, you know, sort of I saw, or I heard one of them say. And even, you know, especially the dialogue. I write in English. You know, I grew up in Canada, so, and this particular region, they have their own dialects. So I certainly wouldn't be able to write dialect for them. I mean, I write in English. I have an assistant to translate it into Chinese. So we will work with the scene with the actors so that they know what's happening. And then I would give them the scene to allow them to sort of discover what they actually say, what they do, you know, things like that. So, you know, by the end of it, it was really, you know, my job is a dramatist, and their job, I mean, their character, and is essentially a version of themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, you got lucky with them, but they got lucky with you. I mean, I mentioned in the beginning when I had the privilege to be with you at a screening in Shanghai where the company was all there. It was unbelievably emotional. I'd only met them just the hour and a half before on screen, and then seeing them there and the sense of celebration and joy and community that that room was like lifting off. I remember that.
That was very, 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 very special screening. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that too. I never screened a film in a sort of a mainstream platform in China. So that was my first time showing a film to a Chinese more mainstream audience. I mean, still a film festival. And then also it was a hometown crowd, you know, in Shanghai. So there were some family relatives. And then of course we had this opportunity after the con screening to show it in Shanghai, so that we could bring the entire opera troupe, you know, fly them from Sichuan. You know, most of them have never been out of the province, let alone to a big city like Shanghai. So they were already, you know, on it. And I mean, I remember you told me this story about, like, you know, how you were watching the film and somebody was video recording with their phone, something that was in the film, and you were trying to tell them, don't do that, and the person turned around and you realize, oh, that person's in the film. It's one of the actors,
Yeah,
so
it's just a reflex when you see at a festival, someone's like taping it. It's like, we don't do that. And then it was like, okay, fine. I backed away.
Yeah, they can do it. Yeah, it's with them. They can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that screening, was very special because, it was just, it was really quite something. I mean, I never experienced a screening quite like that because the Q&A was unlike anything I've ever seen, because I mean, I know you couldn't understand what was happening, but people were, they weren't asking questions, but they were making declarations, like it was that level of like, it was a lot of pride, but also like it was playing into sort of what was happening in China at the time, where, the Chinese, they wanted to be proud of themselves, and this particular film, by being able to play at a big festival, having, a famous actress sort of, kind of say okay, and having the Chinese government, being okay with the film, it gave permission to the general audience to be able to just declare their real feelings, for the film.
I mean, the response in China was incredible, and I'm assuming it will be similar here. We have a large Chinese expatriate community in New Zealand, so I'm hoping that they've been watching the film. But also just, any other New Zealand film festival goer, I think will be really, really touched by the film. So thank you for it. But hey, before I let you go, I just want to talk about your latest project. You've been part of something called Homemade, which is a Netflix series of short films created by Pablo Larraín, who's very well known to our festival audience here. We actually have Emma playing in the festival as well, his latest film. But you're up there with some big names as one of the contributors to this collection. There's Paolo Sorrentino, there's Maggie Gyllenhaal, there's Nadine Labaki, there's Kristen Stewart, there's Gurinder Chadha from the UK, Sebastian Lelio, Anna Lily Amirpour, and it's such a great place to see you up there with them making these films that were all made in lockdown. And you shot yours right there in Mexico, in San Sebastián del Oeste, where you're currently living. I understand, just to let everyone know, I'm talking to, well, I guess you're in Puerto Vallarta.
I'm putting Puerto Vallarta.
Down on the coast, because you actually have Wi-Fi there. You're living off the grid. So yeah. Tell us a little bit about this short film and how that feels to be going out. Actually, in New Zealand time today, I'm speaking to you on the 30th of June, because we're pre-recording this, because you're going back up in the mountains. And this is the Netflix premiere day of that entire collection. So it's just a great coincidence. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the whole collection of everybody's work, so I'm just as curious and excited. For myself, this came to me, I was working with Fabula, the company, and on numerous projects, and it came to me as an invitation. It was and it really is an invitation, because this is a great opportunity to be able to make something creative in isolation. But it didn't feel like, while I was doing it, it was a real, I wouldn't call it a burden, but it was a scary thing, because I think that during lockdown, we're all dealing with the challenges of just surviving, the day-to-day sort of events. And then all of a sudden you had to make a short film, and, in basically like less than 2 weeks time, from conception to filming, and then, to delivery. And I had nothing up in the mountains. I mean, here I'm in Puerto Vallarta. I'm literally in the place where I can just use the internet and answer emails. But where I am, I basically have my iPhone. I shot the film on this, on my iPhone. I didn't even have sound equipment, and it was very scary because I knew certain people were a part of the list, so I had to bring sort of my try to bring up my game in that. And it's very scary because, all of a sudden, without a crew, without everything, you're with nothing, except telling a good emotional story. So it really took you back to the sort of the basic of storytelling, and it was definitely tough. It was very, very tough because my girlfriend, most of the time, they wanted the film in Chinese, because I think there was a lot of other filmmakers from Europe, from Latin America. So they knew that the audience would know who I am. So if they wanted a film made by a Chinese filmmaker, and I felt like a certain kind of responsibility as a Chinese filmmaker to make a film that was in Chinese and talking about sort of the pandemic and not just sort of showing, the kids running around or the dogs running around or something. Talking about sort of the anxiety that's in the air. So I had to dig pretty deep, but I'm very happy, because in the end, to overcome something and actually to do something creative out of this experience was very special. And so I'm certainly, I have no doubt about the fact that this is, we're now, no matter what we've done in our previous, in the previous years in our career or our life, we're now known as the pandemic generation, like there's just the previous version of us, and then whatever we do after this is going to be the new us. There's no going back. So to be able to sort of capture and document sort of this moment for me and my family, and sort of this feeling of confusion was quite special, and it actually brought my family together. Even though we were dealing with some difficulties like everybody. So I hope that what it can bring, at least what my short can bring, is some healing, to sort of what everybody's feeling. Because I think at this particular moment, with everything that's happening in the States and Latin America, this it couldn't have come at a better time. And this is sort of our like cinema's response to COVID, because it's really long and takes very long to make a film. So to be able to have something now that talks about the now is very special. So I'm kind of amazed. How timely this sort of has landed in sort of the perfect spot.
It seems to me you're like the perfect director to invite into a project like that. Looking at To Live to Sing, the intimacy, the closeness, and also bringing a kind of grace in which that company could bow out, which you offered them, and now talking about a kind of healing for the community that you portray in this short film. We have to say goodbye. Super, super nice to see you again. I'm sure that the people who have just seen To Live to Sing will also, if they haven't seen it, now be going to watch also your short on Netflix,
Nice.
the homemade series. I want to do a plug for that because I'm dying to see it, and this is the world premiere day down our end of the world.
Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. It'll get you right into the kitchen and cook something delicious with the family. I think that's or call your parents. That's sort of, I think that's what we all need right now. It's just a little bit of healing and a little bit of connection. Oh, I wanted to say something about sort of to sing and audiences. Yeah, it's really amazing I've never gone through a virtual sort of film festival before. But I think that this might be, okay, To Live to Sing, what I found was such a surprise when I showed it to audience around the world, especially in North America, where there's a lot of Chinese community, was that the families were bringing the elders into the theaters. So there were people that were coming. And I remember at one particular screening in Vancouver, I usually don't sit with the audience. I kind of scoot off to the side and just kind of stand there. And one elder, sort of this Chinese woman, came in with her I assume her grandson or granddaughter, and they came in, and I could tell that she couldn't see very well, and so all she did was just close her eye and listen to the sort of the songs, and also the dialect, because I guess for a lot of the elder community in North America, they don't have a lot of entertainment, anything that they can feel as that is made for them. So in some way, that was a kind of a discovery to have sort of the communities of the Chinese communities overseas to be able to see something that really connects them to something that they've known from their childhood or something like that. So I think that might work even better on a virtual cinema. So hopefully that they'll be able to watch it on the screen, and then bring their parents in the comfort of their home, to watch something that is made in a place that they haven't been in 20-30 years, or something.
Absolutely. I'm sure that will happen, and we'll probably be hearing about it. So as we get feedback around the screenings of the film, we'll be sending that to you. Okay, Johnny, fantastic to talk to you. Thanks again for sharing your film with us, To Live to Sing, in this year's festival.
And very good luck, very best of luck in this really weird, crazy time. But I think it's going to be a very special. I mean, I like what you guys are doing, and I think that it'll be a really different and interesting and positive response for a lot of
Thank
people.
you. I'm really glad we can be doing it with you.
Okay, okay, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.